Hello everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Destiny video. Yesterday, Fantasy Flight released a few more cards for Across the Galaxy. These are all blue cards, mostly focusing on Darth Vader in some way. So I'm just going to break these cards down, I'm going to give my thoughts on them. So first up we have Darth Vader, Tear to Behold, 15 health, 1823, legendary. So right away, same health as Palpatine from Spirit of Rebellion, with a 5-point cost reduction, basically. He doesn't have the ability to do extra damage when the dice get resolved, but you are able to pair him now with another 7-point character. So again, 1823 for his points, 2 melee damage, 3 melee damage, 4 melee damage for a resource, 2 shields, 2 resources, and a blank. He's a Sith character, so once more Sith come out, and there'll probably be cards that interact with that subtitle. He's a power action. So if one or more of this character's dice were removed during an opponent's last turn this round, discard a card from your hand to roll those dice into your pool. So let's say you roll Vader out, he hits both 2 melee damage sides, your opponent plays easy pickings, those dice get removed, you then, on your next turn, power action, discard a card, and roll those dice back in. This is a really interesting power action because it will definitely get around dice mitigation. So, depending on how many dice get removed, like up to 2, I guess, if they do something like easy pickings where it can remove 2 dice of the same symbol and value, you then discard a card and roll those back out. Really high health here, so Palpatine and him have the same health now. He is 2 more health than his previous version from Awakening. So Awakening's Vader was, I believe it was like 1621. This is 1823, and it has 2 more health. 3 damage sides, one of them being a pay side, but 4 melee for 1 resource seems like it's pretty well balanced. And I think he's going to be just a really interesting character, especially with this power action, to where your opponents are going to have to be kind of careful how they mitigate the dice. Maybe if the dice aren't showing damage, you can maybe not remove them. Granted, if you don't remove them, they may be getting 2 shields or 2 resources, or if they're playing yellow, they can bait and switch the 2 resources into one of the melee damage sides. So mitigating his dice is going to be really interesting because you're going to always have to remember that they can, on their next turn, just discard a card and roll 1 or 2 of these dice back into their pool. So that is Darth Vader. We're going to move into our next card. And next up we have Endow, 1 resource, blue villain event. Play any number of blue upgrades from your hand on one of your blue characters, paying each of their costs. Then roll each of those upgrades dice into your pool. So pay 1 to do this. Let's say you have a bunch of upgrades in your hand, and you have like a few resources. You can play those upgrades onto that character, and then roll those dice in. Potentially on a future turn, resolve all of those dice. They get returned to the card, and then if you haven't activated the character yet, you can then activate that character and roll all those dice back out as part of the character's activation. So it's going to be kind of expensive because you're going to have to pay the 1 resource to play the event, and then pay the resource costs on each of the upgrades. I assume you can do an overwrite, so you can at least like overwrite 1 of them. If you have like a 2-cost upgrade and you replace it with another 2-cost upgrade or a 3-cost upgrade, you pay the 1 difference. You then roll those out, potentially resolve them, remove them all once they're resolved, and then in that character, you can potentially, if you haven't rolled it in, roll it in, or if you've already rolled that character out and resolved everything, do something like Price of Failure on another one of your characters, and then ready that character, and then roll them all out again in a future turn in the same round. So that is Endow. It's an interesting effect because it does cost 1, and you're going to need quite a few resources to be able to probably pull it off to its like full potential. You're probably going to need to have a decent amount of resources to be able to play multiple upgrades onto that character so they can get rolled in. But that is Endow. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Fear and Dead Men, 2 resources, blue villain event. Resolve 1 of your dice showing melee damage for free against each of an opponent's characters. So this reminds me of Salvo from Spirit of Rebellion. It was a red card, 2 costs, I believe, and they let you resolve 1 of your dice showing, I believe it was just range damage against each of your opponent's characters. You did have to pay any resource costs associated with the die, though. So if you had like a die that was 3 damage for a resource or 3 range for a resource, you would have to pay the 2 to play salvo, plus the 1 to resolve the die to do 3 damage to each of an opponent's characters. This, I think, at least for melee, is better because you don't have to pay the resource costs according to the wording. So resolve one of your dice showing melee damage for free. So assuming, let's say you do this on Vader's 4 melee side, you could do, for 2 resources, you're going to do 4 damage across their entire board, which is potentially huge, or 3 damage or whatever you roll out. But 2 resources, so salvos cost 2, Fear and Dead Men is also 2. Fear and Dead Men doesn't have you pay the resource costs associated with the die, though. So this could be potentially devastating if you're playing against like a 3 or 4 wide deck. You pay the 2 resources and do, again with Vader, maybe do 2, 3, or 4 damage to all their characters depending on what side of the die it's on. This card is going to be insane with Vader. So that is Fear and Dead Men. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Darth Vader's Meditation Chamber. 2 resources, blue villain support location. As an action, exhaust this support to heal 1 damage from a blue character and place 1 card from your discard pile on the bottom of your deck. Spot Darth Vader to draw a card. So this thing does a few interesting things. So first of all, it will heal damage from blue characters. It kind of prevents milling from happening if you're able to keep a card in your deck. So let's say you're completely milled out, you exhaust this, heal a damage, and put a card from your discard pile on the bottom of your deck, which would then prevent being completely milled out at the end of the round, and you would go into another round where you can potentially win. And then if you have Vader, you get to draw a card. So this should work with all 3 versions of Vader. We have Awakenings Vader, we have Spirit of Rebellion Darth Vader, and we have Tear to Behold from Across the Galaxy. So interesting effects here. Stronger with Vader because you get to draw that card, but also heals and prevents mill. So that is Darth Vader's Meditation Chamber. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Vaders Fist. 5 resources. It's a support trooper, blue villain. 3 range damage, 3 range damage for a resource, 3 indirect damage, 4 indirect damage for a resource, 3 disrupt. And as you play the support, you may roll this die into your pool. So you play it, it immediately gets to be rolled out, potentially resolved, and then when you activate it, you get to roll it in again. And as a power action, roll this die into your pool, spot Darth Vader to turn it to any side. So let's see, you have, when you play it, you get to roll it out. As you can roll it out as part of its normal activation, and as a power activation power action, you can roll it into your pool. And then if you have Vader, you get to flip it to whatever side you want. And the sides on this die are really good. So we have a couple resource costed sides, but we have 3 damage sides, a 4 damage side, or 4 indirect, and then disrupt. And it is 5 resources, so it is expensive, but there definitely are ways to cheat it into play with something like if you play Vader with yellow, like Greedo would be a really good pairing for Vader because he's 7 points. He gets to roll back in when he dies, but then also you can do something like Price of Failure on Greedo to ready Vader. But splashing Greedo into your deck will allow you to get access to Delve, where it's 3 resources, you take damage, and then you can play a card from your hand for free. So you'd be able to play Vader's Fist. It gets played, it gets rolled out, you resolve it, it goes back to its card, you activate it, roll it out, resolve it again, and then potentially you would be able to power action it and then potentially turn the die if you have Vader. So Vader's Fist, it's an expensive support, but it definitely does a lot of things, like looking at like 3 potential rollouts of the die, as well as a dice fixing effect if you're running Vader. And there are ways like Delve to get it out for free or get it out for less resources. So that is Vader's Fist. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Darth Vader's Lightsaber. 3 resources, blue villain upgrade weapon, 1 melee damage, plus 2 melee, plus 3 melee, plus 4 melee, 2 shields and a blank. And after you resolve this die, you may spend 1 resource to roll one of the attached character's character dice into your pool. Then if this upgrade is on Darth Vader, deal 1 damage to a character. So let's say your opponent removes one of your dice. Let's say you've already power action or something like that. They remove one of the dice, and then you roll in, let's say you have Vader on a blank, and this lightsaber on 1 melee. You resolve the 1 melee, remove the die. You can then spend the resource to roll one of Darth Vader's dice back in, and potentially deal 1 extra damage if this weapon is on Vader. So I like what you're doing with these weapons where They have really strong effects, and then if they're on their respective character, they do an extra effect. So if this is on Vader, you get to do one extra damage. After you resolve it, roll one of those characters' dice in, and then if you've done that, it's on Vader, you deal an extra damage. So we have 4 damage sides, 3 of them modified, so this would work really well with, let's say you rolled the 3 or the 4, or the +3 or the +4, you can then use any card that will allow you to resolve the non-modified side as though it wasn't modified, and still you're still resolving it, so you would still then get the effect of after you resolve the die, spend the resource to roll one of the character dice back into the pool. So that is Darth Vader's lightsaber. We're going to move into our next card. And the final card for today is Deadly Advance. 2 resources, blue, neutral event. Count the number of exhausted characters your opponents have. Turn up to that many of your dice to sides showing melee damage. So really powerful in like a 3 or a 4 wide deck if your opponents are playing that. And let's say if you defeated 2 of their characters, you get to flip 2 of those dice to melee damage. Let's say you're playing against a 4 wide, they have 1 character left, so you can flip 3 of your dice to sides showing melee damage. Really interesting because you could, if you somehow can give this ambush, you could then immediately resolve all the dice that you just flipped to melee damage. Or let's say your opponents have claimed and you have nothing but blanks. You can play this and then flip as many dice as your opponents have defeated characters. And then since your opponents have claimed, they won't be able to do anything else. Then just resolve all that damage. So that is Deadly Advance, and that is the final card for today. Looks like we are getting closer to November, so we'll obviously have more videos as more and more cards get revealed. And then once the set actually comes out, whenever it comes out in November, we'll be doing an unboxing of probably at least 1 box, maybe 2 boxes of Across the Galaxy. Until then, that's going to do it for now. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.